Welcome to Decoding Devy. I believe it's episode 10. I am Brandon Haye. You can find me at HayB3, and we're brought to you by the IDP Guys. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe for all the rookie content that we'll have on there. And I'm very happy to have Katie Flower on here, and you can find her at FF_Skylar399. Hi, Katie. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Brandon. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. So how long have you been playing fantasy football in general?
Fantasy football, I started in 2012, and I started Dynasty in 2014.
Okay, when did you start Devy? Or did you start Devy right when you started Dynasty?
I started Devy the year after, so 2015.
Okay, so you have quite the bit of experience with that. So, I'm sure you're happy to see the Devy community kind of starting to grow a little more and, more people get into it.
I'm very happy about that. Not only is the community growing, but the resources are as well. There's more film, there's more stats, there's more, you get the best of both worlds between the analytics guys and the film guys. And there's always that battle, which one's more accurate, which one's better at predicting and things like that. And I'm a hybrid. I'm kind of a half film, half analytics kind of person. And I just really enjoy the game.
No, I agree. I'm glad you said that because that was going to be my next question, with the analytics and the film, especially with the draft coming up and, all the rookie people reviewing the rookies. I'm kind of the same, some sort of a hybrid. I think when I do rank the players and give them kind of a grade, I do give film a little higher of a grade just because, I watch more of the film. But yeah, I think it's very important for people to look at both sides because, if you just look at one side, you're going to miss, part of the picture. Like if you look at stats, that's not going to show what necessarily happened in the game because that could all happen, when the game's well in doubt or just something weird happens, or you can't just watch the film because you need to see, if the numbers back that up. So definitely.
Yeah. What I like about being a hybrid is the stats can make you want to watch the film of somebody that you probably didn't want to or know of as much previously. That happens a lot. So like your question that you've got for me coming up on quarterbacks, you can tell a lot by looking at their stats before you even watch their film. And you can see enough to know whether you want to watch more film on them. And I like watching actual games, not just cut-ups, not just, the highlights, the best of the best. I want to see how they play, how they manage a game, just everything.
No, I agree. Yeah. That's why it's, for some players, it's harder to get, all of those like full game films. But yeah, some people I think look at, the highlights too much and it which shows, great plays. And it's someone will kind of talk about this Senior Bowl. I think that's kind of part of the, allure of Malik Willis. If you watch the highlights, you see his best plays and they're really good. But, you have to see the other ones that aren't so good to kind of get the whole picture. So now we'll kind of talk about it, go into as I was telling you before the show, when I have a guest on, if they have a favorite team, we like to kind of talk about that. So let's talk about Arkansas. So first of all, they had a kind of a little bit of a up and down year last year. I mean, they start off really, really strong, then lost a couple games, and then, won some games later in the year. So what were your expectations for them last year, and what are your expectations for them this coming year?
They overexceeded expectations last year. I really love Coach Sam Pittman and what he's doing with the team. Kendall Briles on offense, the offensive coordinator, had me pulling my hair out several times throughout the year. Like, we have such a good run game. Establish the run. Like, let's go. Get back to basics, and then you can start to throw the ball around and do more things that you want to do. I was also a little bit frustrated that they didn't use Traylon Burks as much as a conventional wide receiver. They used him as a gadget guy in a lot of, because he's an athlete, let's face it, he's a playmaker. But for his own development, I would have liked to have seen him run the route tree a little bit more, things like that. The SEC is tough, and we're in the SEC West. It's the toughest of any of the divisions out there. So expectations, I was hoping we would be above 500, but we did more than that. We won 3 trophies last year, including the Outback Bowl. We won our Battle Line trophy, and we came close to beating Alabama. We gave them a game. We should have beat Auburn, but it just seems like 3 blind mice with the zebra stripes on the field tend to screw us against Auburn a lot. And I'm not one to blame refs, trust me, but you look at the last 2 years against Auburn, and it seems like they may have more money than we think. I don't know. But no, it was a really good season, and they finished on a high note.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad you brought up that about Treylon Burks, because obviously he performed, had his best season this year, but at the end of last season, when I was kind of reviewing him, I kind of said, I said, he's an athlete, but I feel like they're not using him the right way, just throwing all the little short jump offs, kind of using him like a smaller player, like Elijah Moore or something like that, which he can do. But I feel like, he's so good at the contested catches and getting the ball down the field. Maybe that part of that is, they want to get the ball out of the quarterback's hands, as quick as possible, and some of that. But I do agree. That's the only thing with me on him at the next level is just his development, running more routes and being more of a pure wide receiver, because we didn't necessarily see that as much as, other wide receivers coming out.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so KJ Jefferson's coming back. He had a pretty good year. Touchdowns and interceptions. He's definitely good rushing the ball. He had that one game against Ole Miss where it was a crazy back and forth game with him and Ole Miss. So and I kind of asked this: do you on the Devy side, do you see him having a future in the NFL?
When it comes to Devy quarterbacks, there's very few that I'm going to go out on a limb and actually draft. The hit rate is just so low. And I would much rather pad my taxi squad with running backs. It's the easiest position to hit. You got about a 35% hit rate. Wide receivers are about 23%, tight ends 12%, and quarterbacks are a 6% hit rate. Only 2 per year on average make it past their rookie contract. So whether or not he's not somebody I'd be interested in drafting in Devy. But if he ends up as a rookie and he goes in, one of the first couple rounds, then yeah, I would take him in fantasy. But he's a big guy. He's got more build-up speed than short area quickness. He has a decent arm, and he did improve. He worked hard. He's a very good, hardworking guy. So, we'll see. His stats right now, even after the one good year that he had, are not quite where they need to be as a pro prospect. But I do think that could be improved upon. And we'll see. I'm more of a wait and see on him.
One of the reasons I asked that is, obviously with the hype around Malik Willis at Liberty and how Malik Cunningham at Louisville kind of finished the season, and people are, kind of talking him up. I think with people kind of looking for that next super mobile quarterback that can come in, I don't necessarily, agree with that, but I know in some Devy drafts, people just draft those quarterbacks that are mobile and just hope they can figure out the passing, kind of in the thinking of, I've kind of discussed this a lot the last couple of weeks. Everyone's banking on all these mobile quarterbacks having the development that Josh Allen did in the NFL, and it just doesn't happen that way, and that's why I'm trying to steer clear of those type of guys, kind of the same way you're saying. I'd rather just jump all in on the running backs, especially the wide receivers in this class, because I think there's only a couple like really good ones, but there's a lot of good ones. I think the class is fairly deep to get you some wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3s in fantasy. So I look to get more of those. But I tend to agree with you, because I actually was looking back at a Devy draft I had last year, and some of the quarterbacks that were picked, just it's so funny to look at now. One was Casey Thompson at Texas, because he had that really big bowl game. And we see, he had to transfer and, Slovis and Jaden Daniels at Arizona State. So even just after, their freshman year, we thought they were going to be something, and they ended up not being.
There's just so many college quarterbacks. And again, you're not always going to have 5 drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. That is actually more rare, average about 3. So this year, I think, may even be only 2 this year drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. We'll see. But it's just like NFL teams that, because the class has a down class, they push guys up where they shouldn't be. That can happen in a lot of Devy and rookie drafts. Oh, I need to fix this position, so let me throw 8 dart throws at these quarterbacks. If you miss on all 8, you could have had a much higher percentage chance on getting running backs, and running backs are great trade bait in fantasy football. You got a hot-handed running back, and man, you can get that quarterback. And guys are looking at rookie quarterbacks like they're the end-all be-all. Like you'll never get a second chance to buy them at a fair price or a decent price in Superflex. Once the new is worn off, you'll get a chance to buy them at a decent price, and then they've already gone through their rookie contract, and now you know a little bit more about them as a player. And again, it's just a matter of how do you want to spend your draft capital and build your team. But the last thing you want to do if you are struggling at quarterback in a super flex, the last thing you want to do is take a bunch of dart throws on Devy quarterbacks.
No, I definitely agree with that. So moving on with, talking about Arkansas and running the ball, so Treylon Smith transferred out. So I wanted just to, get your opinion on how the running back rotation is going to kind of shake out this year for, people that either play C2C or, regular just college fantasy.
I think it's going to be a lot of Rocket Sanders with Dominic Johnson, who's also a big back. They're both sophomores. And then I think we may get a smattering of AJ Green as a kind of a change of pace type back. But unless an injury, I see those guys running that backfield next year.
Do you think that they're going to, we're kind of talking about this Nets, but do you think that they're going to use one of the running, like AJ Green in some of the packages that they kind of use for Treylon Burks to get, the short passes? Or are they going to find a different wide receiver to do that with?
That's always hard to tell, but they've got some talented wide receivers coming back. I don't know that AJ Green would beat out the other guys.
Gotcha.
We haven't had any practices yet. There's no drum beat. So that's hard to tell. But as far as wide receivers go, there's a couple that are coming back. Are you ready for me to go ahead and
let's
talk about
go
that?
Ahead. Yeah, go ahead into it.
All right. So the biggest news is we got Jaden Hazelwood out of Oklahoma. He transferred, and he's a big-time stud. He's disappointed quite a bit at Oklahoma, but he's also been banged up and injured. He looked pretty good. I saw him in the spring game earlier this year, and he was just starting to feel himself again. You could tell he's got some big play upside. But Keytron Jackson, who was a sophomore 4-star wide receiver, and Warren Thompson is a senior, they're both returning. And I would not be surprised. Keytron Jackson is 6'2", 205, 4-star athlete. And Warren Thompson is 6'4", 200. So either one of those guys could potentially be like the number one if Hazelwood either gets banged up or just doesn't take over that job. And then there's a couple of intriguing incoming freshmen that I'm looking forward to seeing if they get much of a role as a freshman and what type of role. But there are also a couple of bigger wide receivers, Quincy McAdoo and Sam Mbake. And I like both of them. So until I start to see them practice, I couldn't really tell you who has a better chance.
No, that makes sense. And McAdoo is one of the players I put on the sheet to talk to you about. him and Rashad White. And you said obviously with the running back room kind of full, he's probably not going to get much time this year. So he'd be someone down the line. But they are bringing in some very intriguing players. So it'll be very interesting for Arkansas. And just team wise, how's their defense do you think shaping up for next year?
We got some pretty good transfers. One kid from LSU, one linebacker from Alabama, and plus the guys that we've got returning, Bumper Pool and some of the other guys. Jalen Catalon is a beast in the backfield as a defensive back. So, I think defensively they'll be just fine. I like Coach Odom. And again, I think they all mesh well with Sam Pittman, who was an offensive line coach before he really became the head coach. And a lot of people were like, he's not going to make much of a head coach, but he really is. He's a great guy, great person to take this team in and rebuild them. But regarding Dubinion, they've got him listed on 247 as an athlete. He said that he's going to school to play running back. He played some wide receiver, but he's just so small, man. He's 5'10", 185 pounds, and that's so far away from my steak-ass credentials on a running back that I can't put my stamp on him.
No, I understand.
You don't gain that much weight in college for the most part, and to even become NFL average, he'd have to put on 25, 30 pounds. I just don't see that happening all that often. So I'm looking forward to seeing him, but with the two big studs, Rocket Sanders is huge at 225 and Dominique Johnson is 235. That's just a lot of beef. And then AJ Green is probably going to get more play than Dubinion, I would guess.
No, that definitely makes sense, and all that is true. So it'll be interesting. And like you said, I actually watched quite a few Arkansas games this past year because one, I just want to see Treylon Burks, just watch him play. But it's just you were right, tough in that West, especially with I don't really know what's going on with Auburn now, so we don't know how they're going to really go. But Ole Miss bringing in all those transfers. You obviously got Alabama. Brian Kelly's dancing with players. I don't know what he's going to do at LSU. And then Texas A&M had that huge recruiting class, so that West is definitely loaded. And who is the crossover game that you guys always have on the East side?
Well, we played Georgia last year, and we've played Georgia pretty much every year. We play Florida sometimes, but it seems like we always have a tough schedule. No matter, it's not even a question of which year is it. Every year is tough.
Right. Yeah, definitely. It's tough because I know, they try to keep some of those rivalries going. So Alabama seems to always get Tennessee, and Tennessee hasn't been good, in a long time. So they, that kind of eases us up on them. But yeah, I do know that you guys usually get some of those tougher games. So now we can get into, what I mainly asked you for coming on, because you were, were at Mobile for the Senior Bowl. So just want to start kind of some of the things I said was I wanted to clarify some of the things on the sheet. When I was talking about they're more high profile guys, not necessarily all over, but just, I guess 4 of the quarterbacks are they're at least projecting to, to possibly be in the top 5 quarterback range. And I just don't remember there being that many, projected in the first round to go to the Senior Bowl. And it seemed, especially before the opt-outs, that there was going to be much more talent at the Senior Bowl than years past. But so when you said this was your 3rd Senior Bowl, what are you really looking for when you go there?
I'm looking for a number of different things. I'm looking to see how they practice. I coached 5th and 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade boys football for over 12 years, and I refereed I coached baseball, I coached basketball, I coached 14 years total. And so I'm looking for, as far as like the wide receiver position, I'm looking for natural hands catchers. I'm looking for guys that don't fight the ball. I'm looking for their footwork and how disciplined are they? Do they come to practice? Are they hustling? Are they looking for the next drill? Are they listening? Or are they constantly being pulled aside and talked to by the coaches, doing push-ups for not doing the right thing, or, just things like that. At the quarterback position, I'm looking for, number one, their footwork, but their footwork leads to their accuracy of their passing. Footwork, hips, just like a pitcher in baseball. You have to have good lower body in order to have that good upper body, and they've got to work together. So they do a lot of drills where they're running and off platform. So I just want to see the quarterbacks. How do they do when they are moving to the right? How do they do when they're moving to their left? Usually a lot of times they'll do shotgun snap in college now. They very rarely are under center. Seeing them do a 3-step, 5-step, 7-step traditional drop, seeing them do the under center, just the exchange, and things like play action pass, their discipline, their eyes, what are they looking at? What are they looking for? And I saw a lot of, just when you're watching them throw 1-on-0 and they airmail the pass by 5 yards, I'm looking for stuff like that. How accurate are they when there's no defender there? How accurate are they when there is a defender there? And again, on platform, off platform, are they a leader? Are they somebody that gets the huddle and gets the team going, or starts talking to the wide receivers off to the side, their tight ends, things like that? Tight end position and running back at the Senior Bowl is a little harder to evaluate because they don't do a whole lot of hitting on the first couple of days. Although this year they did some 11-on-11 right out the gate on day one. Both teams did. So that was nice to be able to see them have some physical contact, see how they were looking against the defensive backs and things like that. But running back, you're just mainly looking for guys that pop, guys that catch your attention. When you're looking at the wide receivers and you're using your peripheral vision to look at the running back group, and you're constant, oh, that number 25, he keeps catching my eye. Number 25. Oh, who is that? And making notes. And then, obviously there's a lot going on at practice, so you can't just only focus on one player, one thing all the time. I did shoot a little bit of video and take some pictures and things like that. And on the tight ends, I'm looking for physical. I'm looking for guys that can learn to block the appropriate way and that can out-muscle, out-man to make those catches across the middle, which is where most tight ends, that's their bread and butter. So there are some guys that popped. I think that's the deepest position on offense. That's my takeaway. I'm excited about some of these tight ends.
Definitely. And to what you're talking about running backs, from what I've gathered, or, the video I saw, and I've never actually been to the Senior Bowl, but just, what I've seen, running backs, like you said, it's hard to see, but I think whenever they do the drills for pass pro, and then also the running backs that run, that are going to be more of those receiving threats, they're wide receiving and how they run routes. Because I remember last year, Dimitri Felton, I know, he was a big riser because of how he could run routes and, coming out of the running back position. I think that's a big reason the Browns picked him. So, yeah, that's good insight on a lot of that. So let's just get into the quarterbacks. Pretty much the only quarterback that wasn't there was, Matt Corral, because he's not a senior. And all of them were there. Most people are saying Willis looked the best. So what were your takeaways from the quarterbacks?
All right. I was excited to see these quarterbacks all together because, as you mentioned, as far as the guys that could be potentially first-round NFL picks, they were all there except for Matt Corral. That being said, I don't see more than 2 first-round NFL caliber picks. There may be more than that, but I think teams will be pressing, again, just based on need. And any team that really wants to take one of these guys, most of these guys are going to have to sit for a solid year before they should be pressed into playing. And a lot of teams at the top of the draft are weak, and that's why they're there. So I don't see a 101. I don't even see a top 15 quarterback, to be honest. The guy with the highest upside is Willis. However, he is not a passer. He's a runner. And as far as people who know me have heard me knock on Jalen Hurts over and over and over again. I like Jalen Hurts as a guy. I like Jalen Hurts as a leader. I like him as a fantasy asset, with the caveat that I don't think he's going to have a job 3 years from now as a starter. He may be somebody's backup, but unless he improves his passing game, his legs won't hold out forever. And Willis is a worse passer than Jalen Hurts. And I saw Jalen Hurts at the Senior Bowl 2 years ago. So I've compared them in my mind. And yeah, Willis had a couple. He has a decent arm. He had one of the stronger arms of the guys that were there. And he can scramble. But there were times when he was throwing the ball a good 5 yards when there was no defender in sight. It was just trying to throw to an open guy over and over again. And again, I know there's videos out on Twitter. I've seen them where they catch that. They video that one beautiful drop on a dime pass. And that's all that just gets repeated and repeated and repeated. So of the quarterbacks, do I think he has the most upside for fantasy as well as for the NFL? Absolutely, I do. And I'm not saying don't draft him. I'm just saying have in mind that he is not a great passer and has a lot of work to do. And he is even more raw than Jalen Hurts. And yes, Hurts had a great fantasy season. But man, if he keeps it up, he's going to work his way out of a job. I liked Sam Howell. Sam Howell has some footwork issues when it comes to the 3-step drop. And again, working from under center, but that's understandable. I think that if he works on that, he's got good accuracy. He's got decent arm strength. He's a tough runner. He's more runner than people think he is. I liked Sam Howell the best as far as the combination of experience, age, and I think he'll be kind of like a Derek Carr type as far as he's not going to be the greatest fantasy asset in the world, but he's not going to be the worst either. He's going to be better than a Daniel Jones. He's going to be better than some of the other guys when it comes to that. Kenny Pickett, he was hustling and always showed a sense of urgency. I liked the way that he ran plays, like every play, whether it was against the defender or not, he took every play seriously and was snapped right to the ball. And, you know, the throws were sharp, but I'm not overly sold on his entire package either. And I didn't really, Desmond Ridder is skinny. He is very skinny. And he has a loopy arm throw. If you watch his passing, he's decent, but he has such a loopy delivery. And I don't know that he's ever going to work that out.
Let me just say a lot, like your whole talk about, Jalen Hurts and that part. That is what I've been, because I know everyone says, well, but that running, and everything. I'm like, yes, for fantasy purposes, for a season or two, yeah, that's going to be great. But if they can't improve their passing, you're just going in on a guy that's going to have 2 years. Kind of, these guys are better. But if you remember when the Raiders were trying Terrell Pryor out at quarterback, he would have over 100 yards rushing, but have 120 yards passing. He only lasted a year and a half. Now, now that Lamar has done what he's done, and it hurts a little bit, maybe they get a little longer leash than they used to, but still you have to be able to complete those passes. And what you're saying about Malik Willis, I remember I watched that full Liberty Syracuse game. He threw 2 passes that were amazing passes. They were touchdowns. But a lot of what he does, he struggles with progressions. And for how mobile he is, I think sometimes he gets caught in the pocket too much. Because when he had that really nice run in the game and they're kind of going crazy on the broadcast, I just was like, we know he can do that. That's not a question or anything. The scrambling part he has, but I don't think I haven't seen him consistently throw the ball. Same thing with Ritter. He's kind of the inconsistency. I'm still a big Sam Howell guy. I like him. It's just funny. Like after last year, everyone had him at the top. And, he didn't play as well, but he lost a lot of players on North Carolina too. But I still like him, and I think he's a better runner than people give him credit for. And I think he's tough. And if he goes in the right situation, I agree, he could be your quarterback 2 on your team for years. Not top 12, but maybe 14 to 18, or in there. So I agree with you on that on the quarterbacks. But yeah, and you brought up in the Slack chat about 2013, and a lot of that I think kind of runs true. I would take some of the talent maybe over that class, but what you're saying, the quarterbacks just got drafted higher than they should have, and that could really happen with this class.
Absolutely. And again, the teams that need quarterbacks for a reason. Either they waited too long, and they didn't groom the next person in line, or they just suck and they need somebody. So if you're going to put Malik Willis on a team that sucks and they have to press him into service, good luck with that.
No, I totally agree. I know some people in that same, the chat talking about, they all should set, and I tend to agree, but we know that won't happen. There's at least going to be one of them that's going to be pushed in. There's probably going to be one that's going to start day one. We don't know which one, but it's just. And the thing is, with last year, we thought all those 5 quarterbacks were going to light it up, even being rookies, and some people are already giving up on some of them. And not everyone's going to be like Justin Herbert. And I was totally wrong about Herbert. I didn't think Herbert was going to be very good. And, he was. So I didn't draft him. But once I saw he was really good, like you said, I went out and I traded for him. Sometimes it was expensive, but it was, for a top, 8 quarterback, it wasn't out of this world. But yeah, we want all these rookies to play so well right away. I think people just forget some of them, it's going to take time.
Absolutely.
So now we can move on to running back. So, there's a couple that opted out, and Jerome Ford did not play in the Senior Bowl, but he was there for the practices. So what stood out to you with the running backs during the week?
Again, they are very hard to scout at the Senior Bowl because of the types of drills that they do. But when they were doing the pass catching drills, at least the national team, Rashad White, and I hadn't looked at his stats. I hadn't watched a lot of his film going in. I knew he was a big name out of Arizona State, but Rashad White at 6'2", he's a big dude, but he's got such skinny calves. His calves are like toothpicks. And then in the passing drills, talk about someone fighting the ball. He was not a natural hands catcher. He was just, you could hear the ball smack, thud, thud, thud every time. No soft hands, no receiving it into his body. And so when I went back after that night and looked at his stats, and he had such high number of receptions, that was a little bit of a surprise to me. He looked fairly good as a runner, but he did not look comfortable catching or even going out on the routes, even, just a screen pass. He didn't look like he was all that comfortable. Now, again, I don't know if it's just the atmosphere, the coaching, the quarterbacks not being in sync with them. Maybe he was just all jacked up. I'm just not 100% sure, but he didn't look as good as I thought. Brian Robinson is solid. He was the stud of all the running backs there. He looked the part. He's got the size, hardworking guy. He was a hometown Alabama kid that did not want to play anywhere else. He could have started at any college but ended up staying with Alabama through Najee Harris and all the others that he had to wait his time. So I think that he could be, round 3 type NFL guy, and that's a good gig in the NFL. He's somebody that could do some good things. And Tyler Beatty, I know he didn't play. He ended up getting banged up a little bit during practices, but he's the number 25 that I kept every time that I was watching the wide receivers and kind of the running backs out of the corner of my eye. He was constantly doing something good or right, correctly. And it was like every single time. And Jerome Ford, another one, he looks the part. He played at Cincinnati, but he transferred from Alabama. He's not quite as big at 205. Congratulations. He just had the birth of his daughter. That's why he missed the Senior Bowl. So congratulations for being a dad. You got to do what you got to do. TJ Pledger came in late. I watched the game, and I was a little bit surprised because I left Mobile a little bit early because I drove down there and there was a winter storm in Arkansas and Texas. And rather than drive through the ice and the snow and the sleet, I took off a little bit early, but I had seen enough. But I was a little surprised when I saw TJ Pledger, who used to play for Oklahoma, and then he transferred to Utah. He looked pretty good during the game. Like, he got a lot of carries, and I kept saying, where's Tyler Beatty? Why isn't he there? Where's Jerome Ford? Like, why are these guys not around? And then I saw it on the news feed, and I was like, well, shoot.
Yeah, but I think I'm glad you brought up Brian Robinson, because I think a lot of people, especially in the Devy community, don't look at him as highly, because he's like really good at a lot of things. And I think in the NFL, he is going to get drafted higher than a lot of people probably think, because a lot of, scouts and everything, they trust those, Alabama bats because they have to do all those things there. So yeah, I really like Jerome Ford too, and I'm very interested with Tyler Beatty where he would go, and that's interesting. You said about Rashad White because, he had quite a bit of receiving work at Arizona State, so that's interesting. That if that is just a bad week for him, or maybe that's something that he's going to have to continue to work on. During the game, I got I saw on Twitter a lot of people were talking up Abram Smith out of Baylor, and I've heard about Damien Pierce out of Florida. I think Pierce is pretty good, and he didn't play enough this last year. I just don't know about Abram Smith. He looked like he caught the one touchdown, but I wouldn't say he looked overly comfortable catching the ball. He had one drop, a couple of catches. So I just think there's a lot of good running backs in this class. And as we know, there's if they get drafted, in the 5th, 6th, 7th round, the odds aren't great that they're going to, always make an impact. So it's going to be very interesting which ones can make it out and which ones can, make it on fantasy rosters.
Yeah, Damien Pierce looks like a bowling ball. He's short and he's big. He was a pretty good recruit at Florida, but they didn't play him. He didn't get the time as much. Abram Smith is a positional convert. He played linebacker, and he didn't pop to me during practice like some of the others did. And I guess he got voted by the players as the running back of the week for the national team. And I was thinking, well, there was a time when Patrick Mahomes picked Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift. So being chosen by your peers doesn't necessarily mean that you really were the best running back or that you're going to be the best running back in the NFL.
Yeah, very, very true. I was disappointed too, as a Michigan fan, that Hassan Haskins wasn't able to go there, because I think this type of format, he would have really shined and done very well. So that was sad to see him, because he's kind of like the Brian Robinson, that he does a lot of things well. He doesn't have elite speed, but he's a good hard runner. He could probably play special teams, and he's a good blocker. So and I was sad to not see we'll go into wide receivers, to see Jahan Dotson not there. Was there any talk about why he did not show up at the Senior Bowl?
Well, the only talk I heard was a potential rumor. I don't know if I should say it, but since it is a rumor, rumors are meant to be spread. But I heard that it's because he was going to come in smaller than what Penn State had him listed as, and he would rather wait until the combine where people see that, yes, he's a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit lighter, but then they see his speed at the 40 combine time, and then they can forgive his height deficiencies. I don't know if that's true, but that's the rumor going around.
I had heard similar things, but no one's really, obviously that's just a rumor. Yeah, it kind of sucks for him too, because I think he would have really excelled too, because he's such a quick guy and good route runner. I think at those drills, he would have done very well.
He was the one I was looking forward to seeing the most. I was so disappointed. It wasn't fair, Brandon. I was like, come on, man.
It's funny. Before I started watching tape in the offseason, I wasn't really that high on Dotson, but I started watching it, and he really popped to me. It just like, because that Penn State offense was mediocre, and Sean Clifford, he wasn't very good, but he did a lot of nice things. So yeah, I was sad to hear that he wasn't going to be in the game. And yeah, we'll continue with the wide receivers. So there was a lot of hype around Christian Watson, at least on Twitter and everything. Was there that kind of hype at the Senior Bowl also?
Yes. The very first day, I was not as impressed. He started to come around for me on the second day. But the first day, when the wide receivers were doing their just catching the ball, just a short curl comeback route, and he, of all people, was fighting the ball. He's not a natural hands catcher. And I think what it is because he's so tall and skinny that when his hands get inside his body, they're not as effective as when he's reaching. He made some really great reaching catches when he was running routes and, the speed of the game and everything. But if you're just like, when you watch him in the combine doing the gauntlet drill, it'll be very interesting to see. I don't think he's a natural hands catcher, but he did have some impressive catches. And of all the guys, he was the better route runner, the most consistent, whether it was rain or shine, because the second day it was pouring during practice before they moved him inside to the practice facility. But I don't know that he's exploding up draft boards, though, and definitely not NFL draft boards. I still think he's a maybe round 3 or later type of guy. There's juniors out there that have declared that will fill up that first round. I don't think Watson's going to sniff the first or even the second round.
Were there any other wide receivers that really stood out to you?
I liked Romeo Doubs. I liked him. Khalil Shakir, who didn't even play in the game, had the best hands, but he wasn't the best route runner. He wasn't the biggest, most physical guy. I like Braylon Sanders from Ole Miss a little bit. I wanted to like him more, but he seemed to be just more of a show off, just trying to make things look like they're all so difficult. He was the one that was constantly being talked to by the coaches and constantly, like, on kick return, bouncing the ball off his chest and like letting it go 6 yards in front of him, rolling around. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and for the American team, no real surprise because he's bigger, stronger, and older. Dontario Drummond from Ole Miss looked the part of wide receiver. Calvin Austin is little mighty might. I don't know that he's got much NFL or fantasy, but he's fun to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I wonder if he can kind of get a role, or just maybe on special teams or something, kind of, and be used kind of like for the Bears, they use Jakeem Grant, because he's small, but he's really fast, in a like situational role. But yeah, it would be tough for him, with that size. One player that I kind of am interested about just where he goes. is Bo Melton out of Rutgers. I think he can be a special teams guy in the NFL, and that could get him on the team, and then maybe he could show some of his speed. But that's a day 3 guy, and he's definitely not going to move up boards. I know he got some catches in the Senior Bowl, and he has some speed, but I don't really see him moving up boards nearly as much. So since Dotson opted out, I'm guessing the wide receivers were not as spectacular as you're hoping for.
Yeah, that's pretty fair to say.
Okay, and we'll finish up, talking about the tight ends, because you said you like them a lot. And I saw on the sheet you were talking about Jeremy Ruckard and Jake Ferguson. I like both of those. Ferguson's probably more your traditional tight end, old school tight end, but I think he's looked good. It's just, Wisconsin, they don't throw the ball a ton.
Yeah, I really, really like Trey McBride. He's so strong and so physical. And then he's got decent hands. He was in the right place at the right time. His blocking got better and better and better every practice. Jeremy Rucker is Mr. Smooth. Every single one of us, when we were talking, every single one of us said, why didn't he play more at Ohio State? Dude is 6'5" and 250 pounds. He's got the frame for a tight end. But look at Ohio State's running game and look at their wide receivers. They are just loaded. So his production makes sense, or lack thereof of production makes sense, because they didn't use that position as much. But Jeremy Rucker, he's got the prototypical size. He's smooth as a receiver. He makes good adjustments to the ball. And so Jake Ferguson was my number 3. He's also 6'4", 244, good size, decent size hands, another hardworking. You can tell that the kid just loves to play football. And he was a good receiver. I wouldn't say he's a great receiver. He was good. And I think he can be a better blocker than what he showed, but he was physical and, again, in the mix and loved it. And guys like that are going to be lunch pail type NFL guys.
Yeah, I know in the game he didn't look overly great. Charlie Kohler out of Iowa State. How did he look at practices during the week?
I only saw him a very limited time, but he did look the part. He's 6'6", 256. He's got 10-inch hands, so the weigh-in checked all the boxes. I didn't see him as much as I saw Jake Ferguson and Jeremy Rucker and Trey McBride. He was on that same squad. He didn't stand out above them, but he also didn't stand out in a bad way that he was always doing the wrong thing or, lackadaisical, things like that. He was hustling and he looked the part when I saw him. I just saw such a limited amount of him. And I did like watching his games at Iowa State.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny because before, the Senior Bowl and, during the season, everyone said, there's really not that many tight ends, but it looks like there might be more, a stronger class than people thought early on, especially with McBride kind of moving up and people, kind of watching him a little more, since probably not that many watched him at Colorado State during the year.
Yeah. And then on the other team, I like Greg Dulcich. He's out of UCLA. I was very, very shocked that I didn't like Grant Calcaterra. He used to play at Oklahoma. I liked watching him. I didn't watch any of his games at SMU after he came out of retirement. The dude looks like a fire plug. He looks like somebody took a 5,000-pound truck and put it on his head and just squished him, because he's got short legs but a big upper torso. And he just didn't look comfortable out there. He measured at 6'3", 243. I was so disappointed.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's definitely interesting. And that's great insight on a lot of that. And that, this is just the first step. We have the combine, in a few weeks, and then, everyone will be going crazy over who runs the 40s and, all that. Speaking of the combine, does that change much for you in how you look at the players going into the draft?
It does if they don't check all the boxes. I'm not like the 40 time isn't a big killer unless they're like, if it was Jahan Dotson and he comes in at 5'8" and he runs 4.5, then yes, I'm going to be very disappointed and that would knock him down a peg. But for running backs, a lot of people, I think they overrate just the straight line speed. That's not what it's all about as a running back. And even as a wide receiver to an extent. Look at Cooper Kupp, 4.64. And he gets separation. He was at the Senior Bowl 5 years ago. We commented time after time after time, that dude gets open every single time. And his hands were soft. Kleenex hands is what we call them, because his hands were so soft. Talk about someone that is a natural hands catcher of the football. But it was obvious. It was very clear. And we saw nobody like that at all this year.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. That's a big deal. Because I don't know how much you've watched of Jamison Williams out of Alabama.
I love him. Oh, I love him. So I like him a lot too. But I was talking to someone. I did notice it's weird because he makes amazing catches, but sometimes when he goes over the middle, he catches it with his body a little bit. I don't, at least I think it's when it's over the middle. But I saw it a couple times. But it's weird because when he goes outside, he always catches it very nicely with his hands. It's like he tries to curl up with the ball, I guess, expecting a hit or something. I think that's what it is. It's probably that.
But yeah, I mean, he's obviously, it's not like he dropped a ton of passes, and he showed how great he was, at Alabama. So,
but the weigh-in matters. If they come in as a running back, and they were listed as 215, 220 on their college, and then they come in at 195, that's a deal breaker. That puts them into a completely different category, more so than their 40 time. And then just their athleticism, their broad jump and vertical jump. Are they in that athletic stratosphere where we think that they are? And if they don't check those boxes, then yes, the combine could move them down a little bit.
Okay, and just like I want to just get your thoughts, Devy wise. I know this is the time when most people are looking for the upcoming rookies and everything. And since you're, in some Devy leagues, I'm in a Devy league with you. I think I finished last. Did you end up winning that league? I
don't even know which one you're talking about.
The dinosaur one.
Oh no, I ended up in second.
Okay, yeah, I went for a lot of Devy assets, so that my team was very poor. But anyway,
I have a lot of Devy assets too.
That's true. Yeah.
My squad is full. My taxi squad is full, if I remember correctly.
Yes. My big thing was I thought Justin Fields was going to be a lot better his rookie year. I thought he was going to play more, and that kind of cost me in quite a few of my leagues. So I'm kind of hooked on there. So I need the Bears to get him going. But do you really just look? Are you kind of looking at the Devy side and the rookies coming in? Or are you just focusing more on the rookies right now up until the draft? What do you really? What's your kind of process with that?
It's dual. I've started building boards for all of my existing Devy leagues, so I know which players are already declared for the NFL draft, which players are incoming freshmen, which ones were drafted in that league, so that I know here's my short list based on who I'm going to be looking at in the upcoming drafts. I do that this early, partly because I want to be ready, but also because I'm in so many different dynasty shows. Chad and I talk about Devy on Under the Helmet from time to time, but we do have the premium shows where we really dive into Devy more. So just got to be ready for both at this time of year.
No, I totally agree. And I've done the same thing because, I have certain picks. I'm kind of looking at my team and, I want to see, like, say, I have the third pick with a Devy depleted draft. I want to know who's going to be there because it's not like regular rookie drafts. We can't just, look at all the players. And when I did that, I was actually very surprised what players are still, will still be available. It's like every year, there are players that come out of nowhere that, are going to be highly drafted. So I think that's why more people should get into, Devy, because I think it's the natural progression, redraft to dynasty, then the next step, get into Devy, and it helps you in your dynasty leagues too, I think, because you pay attention to so many more players and don't have to cram in, in these, just couple months, like all these different players.
I agree. I love Devy for all of those reasons. And let's face it, I'm watching games on Saturday and Sunday anyway. So why not put that knowledge to use?
Definitely. I agree. And it makes me want to pay attention to, some teams or some players I normally wouldn't, necessarily do. Since you're an Arkansas fan, I'm sure you see a lot of SEC games, and everything. But it makes me like want to look at, other games from other conferences just to make sure, I know, what players are doing well, so I can keep up with all that. So I think that does it for the show. So Kay, thank you for coming on. It was a pleasure, and I'm glad you had fun at the Senior Bowl and were able to come home safe with all that weather.
Thank you. And thanks for having me on. A lot of fun. I always love talking football, but you got the best of everything. You got the incoming rookies, you got Devy, you got my Razorbacks. So thanks. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks everyone. And we'll talk to you next week.
Okay.